Let's talk about an aspect of egg donation that a lot of people don't consider, and that is the legality of it. So I'm here with Sanford Bernardo, and he is an attorney specializing in assisted reproduction law. He's been doing this for a long time. And we together work at the Northeast Assisted Fertility Group, which is an egg donation and servicing agency. And we put together a lot of egg donations, that is, matching up anonymous egg donors with their recipients and seeing through the whole cycle. Egg donation generally is what you consider an unsettled area of law. Is that correct? And could you explain to our viewers
that's a term, that's a legal term of art that doesn't mean that it's everything's up in the air and unsure. It just means that there isn't case law to be relied upon or statutory language, which is a framework for what people can and can't do. Unsettled usually means no law. It means custom. It means what's been allowed, what's happened in the past. So we use that in contracts all the time, basically because there isn't a case that we can refer to show why this is allowed, because there isn't a rule that says it's allowed. It doesn't mean it's risky.
That pretty much egg donation happens throughout the United States pretty freely without any legal restriction. Would you say that?
Yes, I would say that there's certain restrictions in a few states related to compensation, but otherwise there are no states that I know of that simply say you are not allowed to be an egg donor, and that's a state law. So donors are able to donate where they live, or they move to IVF clinics to do the donation out of state if the recipients they're working with are with an IVF clinic in another state.
Okay. If a woman wants to donate her eggs to a local clinic or an egg bank, what kind of legal paperwork does she have to do?
Usually there's an informed consent document or some sort of acknowledgement form that the egg bank will provide to her, but not a full-blown contract.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But when you work with an agency and then there's a particular recipient on the other end, then there's the egg donor contract, correct?
Yes, that's how we do it. Not all programs still do that, but I think it's the protective and right thing to do, to have an egg donor contract. And I know we're going to talk about what goes into it with the recipient family on the other side. Not a contentious exercise, but there are categories of issues that are discussed and negotiated in the agreement. That I think egg donation is much more complex than simply dropping off your eggs at a collection site and walking away with some money. There's so much more that goes into it.
Okay, good. And at what point in the process is the egg donor contract started?
Typically, we start the contract when the donor has finished her screening appointments and has been cleared when she's a first-time donor. If she's a repeat donor, we can often start the contract a little sooner after her screening appointments. If things are looking good, we don't have to wait for every last result to come back.
Mm-hmm. Technically, how is it started? Who drafts it? And is there legal representation for both parties? Are they independent?
Yes. Nobody is forced to use a lawyer in our program. It's very recommended. And in fact, the lawyers that we have who are our intended parents, but are lawyers in other fields, routinely are intelligent enough to know that they should be engaging counsel that's experienced in this discipline. But you truthfully don't need a lawyer. You do if you want to protect your anonymity. It's difficult to negotiate as a single person on your own with another lawyer without giving your name away.
Well, and also it's the recipient's lawyer who drafts the contract. So you really need to know how to draft a contract.
There are two lawyers. Right. The recipient's lawyer drafts the contract, and then the donor has her own independent lawyer to review the contract, make any suggested modification requests, changes. Usually there's a little bit of back and forth, and then we reach the settled version of the contract. Most of the terms in our program are fixed. The compensation, for instance, is known ahead of time. The donor knows what she's going to get. The intended parents agree to pay her that after the retrieval. But other things having to do with issues in her life, maybe she needs childcare, maybe there's a lost wage concern, maybe she wants information after the donation, maybe she doesn't want information. Those sorts of things are talked about in the contract and an agreement is reached. And it almost always is reached. A lot of people think that, well, what if it, this breaks down? Negotiations don't break down. Each side is very motivated for this to work out. So there's never one issue that,
and just one more thing is to end the kind of introductory part. The contract, once it's signed, does not mean that if the donor can't donate her eggs, that she's going to be sued for not donating your eggs. There's no contract that can be, you can't be contractually forced to donate your eggs, even if you do sign the contract. So can you explain then what the contract does and doesn't do legally for both parties?
The analogy, it's a personal services contract. An egg donation is not a donation in the altruistic sense of donating something. You're giving something, and you're donating as given of something of your own in order to have a fee in exchange for the time and effort of the donation process. But so it's sort of a term that's used in a different way. But the analogy is of a personal services contract. If you're an opera singer and you are agreeing to have a run at the Met for 2 weeks and you decide you don't want to do it, well, you can get out of that. No one's going to haul you in there and tell you to sing, or else what happens? You don't get paid. And if it's premeditated, you might be liable for damages for breach of contract and reliance issue damages and things like that. So donors can never be forced to donate their eggs. They can say, I've had a change of heart, or I have a new job and I can't make it there, or whatever. And they're not responsible for paying anybody back unless, and this is very, very rare, it can be shown that they never intended to do this in the first place, and they were basically stringing along the intended parents who were expending money and time in reliance on what she was promising to do when she never really promised to do that.
The contract, once it's signed, can't force either party to go through with it.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
It also can't guarantee results. So you can't say, if this doesn't make me pregnant, we're going to sue you. And, or say you need to give us a certain number of eggs or we're going to sue you, or anything like that. Is that right?
Right. Payment cannot be made contingent upon how many eggs are retrieved from your body, although there is one clinic that seems to do that improperly. Okay. I will say, just for full disclosure for people to understand what the risk level really is, donors back out in small numbers. Recipients back out in very small numbers. So we have seen recipients, because of marital issues, because of job changes, because of terrible things that may happen in their lives, decide close to the retrieval that they can't go through it, and then the donor can't continue if they decide they don't want to do it. And we have seen donors have changes in their lives that prevent them from going forward or make it less desirable for them to do it at that time, which speaks to one thing that's very important for either side: working expeditiously, just because things happen in life. So if you want to make it more certain that there won't be a disruption, don't delay unless there's a medical reason to do so. Move quickly, and you're less likely to have something come up on either side that would force the contract or force one party or the other to try to abandon the engagement.
Okay. And one last question about just the starting of the contract. How do the two parties, the recipients and the donor, find their lawyers to do this? And how do they maintain mutual anonymity?
Okay, there are very few lawyers who concentrate in this field. It's a good idea to work with somebody who does this a lot, not your local real estate lawyer who may do one or two or want to try their hand at this. So how the recipients usually find their lawyers are either the clinic maintains a list of lawyers that they recommend that you can check into, or I can recommend somebody that we've worked with over the years in their state who's worked with our program in their clinic that I can offer as a possibility. And then you retain your own lawyer to draft the contract. The donor will have her own lawyer, somebody we recommend to her also. We never force her to work with anybody, but most donors take our recommendation and work with that lawyer. To maintain anonymity, and to prevent any inadvertent email strings that go awry with personal information on them, we as a program don't give the name of the donor to the recipient's lawyer. And we don't give the name of the recipients to the donor's lawyer. Even though lawyers have an ethical obligation to keep matters confidential, they can always have a mistake, inadvertent mistake, or a slip up on an email or something like that. And you can never recover that breach of privacy. So we try to keep mistakes from happening just by not giving information out that's not necessary to have in order to do this. So the donor and the recipient will know each other by codes. There's a code to identify them. There will be an actual signature of the contract, and the signature page for the intended parents is kept by their lawyer, and the signature page for the donor is kept by her lawyer, so that the lawyer will see that the actual client signed the contract. But the codes are what are used in the contract itself, so that each side doesn't know the full identity of the other.
Okay. It sounds more complicated than it really is. We've done hundreds of these and they almost always go pretty smoothly, right?
That's correct.